The day they locked down Mariona, voices from inside El Salvador's harshest jail. The prison gates slammed shut at sunrise. A loud metal echo rolled through the concrete walls of Mariona Prison, and everyone inside knew this was the day everything changed. Guards stormed the hallways in black helmets, shouting orders no one could understand. Doors banged open, boots hit the floor. The prisoners were told to sit down, hands on their heads, and not move. No one knew why, but everyone felt the same fear. Mariona was on full lockdown. From the outside, it looked like another routine security sweep, but inside, it was chaos. Inmates whispered that a gang fight had broken out the night before. Others said the government had ordered a total shutdown to stop smuggled phones and messages from leaking to the media. Whatever the reason, the guards moved like soldiers in a war. They cut power to the cells, shut off water, and took away food trays. One man shouted for help, and a baton struck metal. Then silence. The smell of sweat and fear filled the air. Hours passed with no explanation. The prisoners sat in the dark, backs pressed against damp concrete. The heat was heavy, and no one dared to speak above a whisper. A man named Miguel, jailed for stealing a motorbike, leaned toward his friend and said quietly, "They're punishing all of us. Someone must have talked." His voice trembled. He knew what talking meant. Someone had leaked the truth about what really happened inside Mariona. By afternoon, the prison had become a furnace. The fans had stopped, and the cell block windows were sealed tight. Sweat dripped from the ceiling like rain. One prisoner fainted, his body limp against the wall. No guard came. Inmates took turns fanning him with pieces of cardboard torn from food boxes. Outside their door, footsteps echoed again. The locks clicked open. This time, guards carried black bags filled with what looked like documents, but one bag moved, slowly. The men froze. They realized it wasn't paper. It was a prisoner who didn't survive the night. Panic rippled through the cell. Some men prayed, others screamed. The guards barked orders and pointed guns. "Quiet. Everyone stays where they are," one shouted in Spanish. Then the lights flashed on for a few seconds, blinding everyone, before cutting off again. A deep, heavy silence. Miguel whispered, "They're locking us in for good. No food, no water. Tell them outside."
But no one outside could hear them anymore. Phones were confiscated, visits suspended, and even the guards' radios were silent. Only one thing moved freely inside Mariona now: fear. The next morning, something even worse happened. The guards pulled 10 prisoners from their cells without saying a word. They were lined up in the corridor, hands tied with plastic cuffs. One tried to ask where they were going, but a guard struck him in the stomach. The others lowered their heads. Miguel counted each step as they disappeared around the corner. 10 went out. None came back. When the night fell again, the remaining prisoners heard noises from below the floor, something heavy being dragged. A few of them started praying louder. A young man near the door whispered, "They're burying them here." The words hung in the dark like smoke. And then, without warning, the electricity snapped back on. The loudspeakers crackled. A voice spoke in a calm, flat tone. "From this moment, no one leaves their cell. No communication, no movement. Mariona is under total control." Miguel looked at the faces around him, pale, hollow, terrified. They all understood now. This wasn't a temporary lockdown. It was a message. And somewhere deep in the silence of that prison, a single question echoed between the walls. Who will make it through the night? The morning after the announcement felt like an endless dream, silent, heavy, and unreal. No one knew the time anymore because the sun never reached inside. The cell block lights stayed dim, buzzing softly overhead. The prisoners were still sitting in the same place as the night before, afraid to move. The air smelled of sweat, damp clothes, and fear. Miguel tried to count the hours by the sound of the guards' boots, but even they had stopped walking. Only once in a while a shout echoed from another wing. Short, sharp, then cut off. "They're breaking them," whispered a man called Louis, sitting near the wall. He had been in Mariona for 3 years and knew the system too well. "They want silence, nothing else." At midday, the sound of a metal cart rolling down the hallway broke the stillness. It stopped at each cell, but the guards didn't open the doors. Instead, they slid small plastic bags under the bars, each with a few dried tortillas and a bottle of water. Some prisoners rushed to grab theirs, while others shared with those too weak to move. "This isn't food," one man said, staring at the cold tortillas. Miguel answered, "It's control. They want us weak."
Suddenly, from another cell, someone started coughing hard, deep, wet, and painful. The others called for help, banging on the door, but no one came. The man kept coughing until his voice faded to a whisper. Then there was only silence. "He's gone," said Luis quietly. Miguel clenched his fists. "They'll say it's sickness, but it's them. They're letting us die one by one." Later that afternoon, a new sound filled the air. Music. A small radio somewhere in the guard tower began playing a marching song. It was strange and mocking. The guards laughed above them while the prisoners sat in darkness. Then a loudspeaker clicked on again. "Anyone caught speaking will be punished. You are no longer gang members. You are numbers, nothing more." Hours crawled by. Inmates whispered stories of what they'd heard in other blocks. Men forced to kneel for hours, others taken away for questioning and never seen again. One man swore he heard a scream coming from the basement, long and thin like metal tearing. "That's not a man," someone said. "That's something else." Night came again, but no one could sleep. The heat was thick, and the smell of rot was stronger now. In the corner of the cell, water dripped from a broken pipe. Miguel used a small tin can to catch it, his only way to keep a few drops for the next day. He shared it with Luis, who smiled faintly and whispered, "If we ever get out, you tell them what they did here." Then, from far down the corridor, a sudden commotion erupted. The sound of chains clattering, voices yelling, then boots running fast. A single gunshot cracked through the air. The echo bounced off the walls and died slowly. Everyone froze. A few seconds later, a guard shouted, "Stay down! Anyone standing will be shot!" Miguel pressed his back against the wall, heart pounding. He could hear someone crying softly in the next cell. Then another voice, older, trembling, whispered, "That was cell 14. They took them this morning." No one spoke again for the rest of the night. When morning came, a thick smell of smoke drifted through the cracks. Miguel crawled to the door and looked through the small slot. Down the hallway, a gray cloud was spreading. Somewhere, something was burning. It wasn't until a piece of ash floated past his hand that he realized what it was. Clothing, prison uniforms. The guards were burning them in the courtyard, one pile at a time. For every 10 uniforms, a new number appeared on the register. The rest were erased. Miguel sat back slowly, his hands shaking. He whispered to Luis, "They're erasing us." Luis nodded, eyes blank. "Then we must find a way to make them remember." That night, when the guards' footsteps faded, Miguel picked up a small piece of charcoal from the floor and began writing on the wall. Just one word, scratched into the concrete. Alive. He didn't know if anyone would ever see it, but it was a start, a mark that said they had existed, that their voices still mattered. As he pressed his ear to the wall again, waiting for the next signal from the other cell, he heard faint tapping, 3 knocks, then another 3. The message was clear. Someone else was still alive. The tapping returned the next night, softer but clearer this time. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. Miguel pressed his ear to the cold wall, heart racing. "Who is it?" he whispered. A faint voice came through, cracked and tired. "Sector D," it said. "They moved us yesterday. We're dying here." Miguel looked around to make sure no guards were near. Everyone in his cell sat still, pretending to sleep, but their eyes were open, wide with fear and curiosity. He answered quietly, "I'm Sector B. How many of you left?" The voice on the other side hesitated. "Maybe 20, it said. There were 50. The words hit Miguel like a punch. He knew what that meant. The missing weren't moved. They were gone, dead or buried under the courtyard,
like the ones they'd seen dragged away 2 nights ago. He whispered back, "We need to tell someone outside. The world has to know." The reply came slow and hopeless. "There's no outside here." Then silence. Hours passed. The only sounds were rats scratching behind the wall and water dripping from the ceiling. Miguel couldn't sleep. His body ached, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. How could he send a message? The guards had taken everything, even scraps of paper. But maybe there was another way. He waited until the next time food came. 2 small tortillas and 1 boiled egg. When he bit into the egg, something hard hit his tongue. He spat it out and gasped. It was a small piece of metal folded tight. Inside, there was a note written in tiny letters. "We are watching. Don't stop. Help is coming." Miguel's heart stopped. Someone on the outside still knew they existed. Someone was listening. He showed the note to Luis, who stared at it in disbelief. "How?" he whispered. Miguel shook his head. "It doesn't matter. We just need to keep the truth alive until they reach us." For the first time in weeks, they felt a spark of hope. That night, they began whispering between cells again, stories of what was happening. One man described guards beating inmates with rifle butts. Another spoke about men disappearing after being called out by name. Each story was a piece of a bigger picture, a story the government didn't want the world to hear. But hope has a price in Mariona. The next morning, during the daily inspection, guards found charcoal marks on one of the walls. "Who did this?" one shouted. No one answered. They dragged 3 men out of the cell and took them away. Hours later, the smell of smoke drifted back. Luz looked at Miguel and said quietly, "We need to stop." Miguel shook his head. "If we stop, they win." That night, he used a small piece of bone to carve a message deeper into the wall. "We were here. Don't forget us." He covered it with dirt so it wouldn't be noticed, but he knew someone would find it one day.
2 days later, the prison was visited by a group of officials in suits, men from the capital. They toured the halls, smiling and nodding while guards stood tall beside them. Cameras followed, showing clean hallways and quiet inmates. But what the cameras didn't show were the locked wings filled with hundreds of starving men, hidden from sight. From his cell, Miguel could see the reflection of the official's shoes through the crack under the door. "Smile," a guard whispered through the bars. "The president's people are watching." When the visit ended, the prison went darker than ever. The lockdown continued, food grew scarcer, and more men fell ill. Some whispered prayers, others stopped speaking altogether. Miguel wrote their names on the wall, all the ones who had died. It was his only way to keep them alive, at least in memory. Weeks turned into months. The outside world had almost forgotten about Mariona, drowned in the noise of politics and promises. But one night, the tapping came again. This time, it wasn't from Sector D. It was closer, almost next door. "Miguel," a weak voice said. "They're coming tonight. They're moving us again." "Where?" Miguel whispered. "I don't know. Maybe Sikut, maybe nowhere." Miguel froze. The Terrorism Confinement Center, the new mega prison where inmates were sent to disappear forever. He knew if they were transferred there, no one would ever hear from them again. He turned to Luis. "We can't let them take us," he said. Luis laughed bitterly. "And what do we do? Run through walls?" But Miguel had a plan, desperate and dangerous. He had seen one of the sewage drains behind the showers, half covered with a broken grate. It led to a tunnel that ran toward the outer fence. "If we can get a message through there, maybe someone will find it," he said. That night, when the guards dimmed the lights, Miguel crawled quietly to the drain. He took the small piece of metal from the egg, the one with the hidden note, and scratched new words on it using a stone. "Mariona Prison. Hundreds dead, still alive inside. Help us." He wrapped it inside a scrap of plastic from a food bag and pushed it through the drain until it disappeared into the darkness. Then he whispered a prayer. "Please let someone find it." Days later, strange things began happening. Guards looked nervous. There were more patrols, more searches.
Rumors spread that a foreign journalist had asked the government for access to Mariona. The guards denied everything, but their eyes showed fear. Miguel didn't know if his message had reached anyone, but he could feel change in the air. Still, the danger was far from over. One evening, during the surprise inspection, guards entered their cell and ordered everyone to stand. They searched under mats, behind the toilet, along the walls. When one guard's flashlight hit the corner where Miguel had carved his message, he stopped. The guard leaned closer, brushing off the dirt. The words glowed faintly in the dim light. "We were here. Don't forget us." The guard turned around slowly. "Who wrote this?" No one answered. The guard's face twisted in anger. He pointed at Miguel. "You, come with me."
Luis tried to step forward, but another guard raised his gun. "Stay back." Miguel was dragged out of the cell, his wrists tied. He didn't fight. He walked down the corridor, past the cells where other inmates watched silently. When he reached the end of the hallway, he heard someone start tapping on the wall. 3 knocks, then another 3. The sound spread like a wave from one cell to the next, echoing through the prison. It was their signal, their goodbye. The guards pushed him into a small room with no windows. One of them grabbed his shirt. "Who are you working with?" he demanded. Miguel didn't answer. The guard struck him across the face. "You think you can shame this country? You'll never be heard." Miguel spat blood and whispered, "Then why are you afraid?" The guard froze for a moment, then turned away. Miguel was left alone, tied to a chair. He looked at the floor and saw something carved into the concrete. Faint letters, maybe from another prisoner long ago. It read, "Still breathing." He smiled weakly. The next morning, when the other inmates woke up, Miguel's cell was empty. The wall where he had written "alive" was scrubbed clean, leaving only faint scratches beneath the surface. The guards said nothing. But 2 weeks later, news broke outside El Salvador. A human rights group released a report about secret conditions inside Mariona Prison. The same words Miguel had carved appeared in the report's opening line. "We were here. Don't forget us." No one knew how the message escaped, but it spread fast. Photos, testimonies, and leaked videos followed. The government denied everything, yet international pressure grew. For the first time, people around the world began asking what really happened in Mariona. Inside the prison, the men of Sector B heard about it from a new guard who whispered the news through the bars. Luis closed his eyes and smiled. He did it. Miguel made it out, in his own way. That night, someone in the dark began tapping again. Slow, steady, proud. 3 knocks, then another 3. The rhythm spread from one cell to another across the walls of Mariona. It was their way of saying his name, their way of keeping the truth alive. Outside, the story of the lockdown reached millions. And even though Miguel was gone, his voice, and the voices of those still trapped behind the walls, could finally be heard beyond Mariona's gates. What happened inside Mariona Prison reminds us that behind every locked door, there's a story the world was never meant to hear. These men were forgotten, silenced by fear, hidden by walls, and erased from records. But their voices survived, through whispers, through scratches on concrete, and through stories like this one. If you believe these stories should never stay buried, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and help us keep uncovering the truth. One voice, one prison, one untold story at a time. This is Ethan Crime Chronicles, where real stories from the darkest places in the world finally come to light.